Welcome to the Horsemouth Podcast. It's my excuse to meet fascinating people and learn how they approach work, creativity, and problem solving. My guest today is a serial entrepreneur who began his career as a freelance writer, blogging for websites like Legally India and Bar and Bench under the pen name Legal Poet. A graduate of the National University of Juridical Sciences in Kolkata, he completed his MA in Law, Politics and Society from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi. In 2010, in the third year of his college, he became the founding CEO of Lawctopus. What started as a newsletter to provide updates on job opportunities, competitions, career advice, and internship experiences has today become a ubiquitous and indispensable tool for every law student in India, trusted by nearly 5 lakh readers every month. The company has since grown to include its own edtech platform called Lawctopus Law School, where quality learning material has been delivered to over 20,000 learners in unique and effective ways. He is also the founder of Noticebard, an online media platform that publishes opportunities like conferences, courses, internships, jobs, and more for school students and computer science geeks. As if that's not enough, he authored the incredibly influential book titled Law as a Career, an absolute must-read for any young person considering a career in law. He has keynoted at various forums like TEDx, leading private colleges and NLUs, and is presently training to be an ICF certified coach. He is also the recipient of the 4th edition of the Business World Legal 40 Under 40 Award. This morning, however, in what can only be described as perhaps his biggest entrepreneurial mistake, he has agreed to be on my podcast. I intend to pick his brains on his approach to deep work, decision making, spirituality, and much, much more. To see his inspiring work over the last 14 years, please visit lawctopus.com, lawctopuslawschool.com, and noticebard.com. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn for further queries. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Tanuj Kalia. So, I'm 9 years too late, but I needed to congratulate you on Law as a Career. It's an incredible book. And, when I was reading it, I realized that the voice of the book is that of a big brother and of a mentor or a guide. And I really wish that I had found something like Law as a Career when I was going to my college. There are so many great tidbits or little lessons that you get out of it. And it's really very useful. So congratulations on that book.
Thanks a lot for saying that, Shubhankar. And I'm glad that you read the book.
No, I read it cover to cover. And, I noticed that, of course, with every chapter as the book progresses, you have cited very meticulously all the experts that you've interviewed for the book. And as I understand, there are about 44 experts that you interviewed at different mediums, either on mail or phone, or you met them perhaps. When you met these experts or interacted with them, I'm sure there must have been a lot of conversations which wouldn't have made it to the book because they would have been probably outside the scope of the book. 9 years or 10 years down the line, is there a certain conversation that has perhaps stayed with you?
Yes, I think so. The book happened a long time back. This was 2015, and I don't have a good memory. But I do recall. Maybe it has already made to the book. I don't remember whether it has made to the book or not. But something I remember was, so one of my friends was working with Mr. Sriram Panchu, who is the leading mediator in India. I visited his office personally. The office was in Delhi, and it was like meeting a legend and someone I'd heard of and looked up to for a very long time. We were discussing mediation as a career, and this book is largely for young people, right? Law students and young lawyers. And this guy is, of course, very experienced. So when we were talking about mediation as a career, he said that, Tanuj, the biggest of the mediation cases are going to come to older people. And he used this brilliant word, which is sort of sunk into my subconscious a lot, which is that big mediation cases will come to people with a lot of gravitas. That time I was not sure of what the word exactly meant, but I think I've Googled the word since then, at least, once a year, just to get present to the word of, gravitas.
Definition of it.
Yes. So I think that made me believe that, hey, there are some career options, there are some insights which you can only gain after some experience. That is one conversation I clearly remember, which has sort of influenced my working also in some way.
Now, Tanuj, let's move to a certain memory, because I know you're bad at memory, so I'll help you with something.
Yeah.
So there was a little kid in Saint Mary High School in Sundarnagar who was woefully shy and introverted. Now you are not that kid anymore. I think you've broken through that in many ways over many years. And when we talk about being shy or introverted, there's always it is always seen as an impediment to success or an impediment to growth or getting skills. Did being a shy kid in any way assist your growth or assist your thinking or thought process?
Yes, I think a lot. And to be honest, I think I'm still that shy, introverted kid. It's just that, I've gotten used to speaking, and I can be extroverted when I want to be. So, but I think deep down, I am an introvert and shy kid. And I think, being introverted, it brings some set of benefits with it. So for example, when you're very naturally introspective, you like dealing or exploring your internal world. That is something which has been with me since I was 12 or 13. I've loved exploring my inner world, whether it is through books, through courses. I mean, in the last 22 years now, it has given me so many gifts. It has given me so many great experiences that perhaps if I were an extrovert, I would not have those experiences, and I would not have had those experiences in a way that I had because I was an introvert. So I think I consider it as a huge superpower. Of course, it can limit you as well. It can limit your growth as an individual if you start relating to it in a way that is limiting, that it becomes a cage.
Like you're learning a lot, but you're not practicing it in the real world. You're unable to go out.
I think I have been able to practice, a lot what I've learned. But yes, I think as an extrovert, maybe I would have never been interested in such realms.
In introspection.
Yes, introspection or, personal growth in a way that I'm interested in. I consider being introverted as a gift. Nothing against the extroverts. I'm sure, being an extrovert is fun too. Yeah. But I don't think one can experience both in a lifetime.
Tanuj, when you were growing, first year you were interested in IP, then it went to family mediation, then legal journalism, and finally it culminated with entrepreneurship. Now you've been an entrepreneur for at least 14-15 years. Are your interests now again changing in terms of your career or how you want to spend the rest of your life?
See, I know I'm fundamentally an entrepreneur. I love creating things, building them to a certain scale. I love scale, though the scale of Lawctopus would not suggest that I love scale. I'm fundamentally an entrepreneur, but my interests on the fields in which I want to express my entrepreneurship, they have changed. So till now, or I think till a decade, it was very much about enabling informed and inspired careers. Even as a college kid, when I was a part of the internship cell, my hobby was going to various company pages and checking their internship section of the website. Something fascinated me about it. And I was really interested on, excelling in career. How can a CV be built? How can you apply for internships? But I think as I've grown, my interests are now about life in general. If I were to try, presenting this pivot in a very clear way, so it is from enabling informed and inspired careers to enabling informed and inspired lives. So I think my next startup or my next venture, whether it's a part of Lawctopus or whether it's outside of it, is going to be around this theme. But I will, I think, always be an entrepreneur.
You presented me a entry into the next question, which was, you've mentioned in your book that peer pressure can make you do funny things even when it doesn't feel right. Is that why you chose bootstrapping and not funding?
Okay, so I think the decision to fund or not to fund is not driven by this. And this is, I think, something which I borrowed for Paul Graham. He writes some great essays as well on entrepreneurship, starting up, scaling up. I think luckily I have never been influenced by peer pressure, or for some reason, I've never let peer pressure dictate my choices. It's again something which I have not worked upon. So for example, you had asked the question about being introverted earlier, right? So public speaking is something, for example, where, I had to really work on my skill and reach a level where I'm now comfortable doing public speaking. I've never been someone who has been influenced by peers. I did not, for example, question one bit my decision not to litigate or not to get into corporate law firms, while 95 or 99% of the batch and the best of the people, were going into these fields. Great for them. I never thought that this was my cup of tea, and I never.
Where did this confidence come from? Was it something that your parents instilled in you, or were you just crazy? Did you have crazy belief in yourself?
Uh, I don't think I would say it was crazy belief, and I give 99% of the credit to my parents. But again, for this bit, I don't think my parents influenced me too much in this bit, like that you take a path which is entrepreneurship, which is about creativity.
Because as I understand that you come from a family of teachers. You have about 6-7 teachers on your mother's side.
Yes.
So I mean, and also teaching is seen as, I mean, it's a noble profession undoubtedly, but also like a very safe career path, I'll say.
Yes.
So was there any immediate example in your family?
I mean, my dad is a civil servant and he had his own share of struggle. So, for example, he gave the IAS exams a couple of times. He went to the interview a couple of times. So, there was a bit of struggle involved and he did extremely well for himself. My uncles on my paternal side, they have their own business, like they have their own shop. But again, I don't think so. I think what influenced my entrepreneurship was this tiny book, which I had read probably when I was 4 or 5 or 6 years old, which was about a mouse going to a fair and selling its stuff. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to also sell stuff. And, when I look back, I realized there were very, very moments in my life, in my childhood, when I created something and I was like, I want to sell this. So, example, we were making like we used to play cricket a lot. So we were making these balls of mud and clay. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I think I should sell this. Yeah, so maybe that tiny book read long back, I think it probably influenced me in some way. Where I got the confidence from, I really don't know. I think, so Shubhangi, let me tell you this, that because I was from a very good law college, I was studying there, I knew that even if I failed, I would get a decent job. There was a big safety net. So I think I believed in the college brand. That gave me the confidence, especially with Lawctopus.
Okay. Now that we are out of college and now we are running Lawctopus, somewhere you mentioned that business should be seen as a vehicle to serve people. And also, it's on the Lawctopus Law School website that warmth is at the core of Lawctopus. In my personal experience, very limited experience, I have seen that when businesses grow or expand, they become kind of sterile and, there is a corporatization of the business. But here you are talking about scaling. Obviously, you're talking about scaling quality and everything that goes on with a e-learning platform, but you're also talking about scaling warmth.
Yeah.
Now, do you see that as an upcoming challenge for you?
No, definitely. I think it's a huge challenge and you're absolutely right. I think once an organization achieves some sort of scale, you would want to instill some processes, and processes inherently mean that, you are removing humans out of the picture, and then bringing warmth to such processes becomes a huge challenge. But I think something which I've believed firmly, and I try to tell my team that as well and instill that in them, that hey, if there is a younger cousin of ours who's in front of us, so for example, my sales team, right? If they're talking to a potential client or a potential student, what they would be telling their cousin is what they should be telling this client. So if a course is not for the client, the salesperson, the counselor, they should tell directly that, hey, this course is not for you. And if the course is for them, then they should really, do whatever it takes to actually make sure that the student becomes our client and we serve the student well. So I think that these small, I would say, mental models of treating your especially student customers, like your cousins, like your younger cousins, I think that's a inherently very relational thing, right? And when things become very relational, there is some warmth in that. It's difficult to do at scale, and I hope we are able to achieve that as we grow bigger.
So that human and personal touch that comes at the front of the company with the interaction of the client then has to be passed on to the teachers as well and the inner management as well.
Yes. And I think nowadays, especially for Lawctopus Law School, for our courses, we have a good feedback mechanisms. I mean, if you want to use some sort of jargon, it is like a feedback loop. So at the end of every batch, we have some feedback being taken from the learners. And if we notice something jarring, we would want to address it. Something jarring could mean, let's say our own processes or maybe the learning manager, the faculty. So many things are involved there. But if you notice something jarring, then it needs to be fixed.
So I think we'll come back to the feedback a little later. Let's look at a typical work day for Tanuj Kalia. What time do you wake up?
8:30 a.m.
Are you a creature of time and discipline? Do you follow certain routines or certain systems?
I think so. This has happened in the last 2 to 3 years. I plan my year. For example, I have written goals for this year. And I have monthly goals as well for myself, for my personal life, as well as my professional life. So I love these plannings. I think it just gives my mind, something to rest. As in, I know what needs to be done, and then I'm not going at too many places. So I have goals for the month, I have goals for the week, and I plan my day hourly, either the night before or when I start my day. For example, from 9 to 10, what I'll do, 10 to 11, 1 to 2, etc., etc. It goes on and on. And every week I also reflect. So, for example, what were the losses for the week? And I give myself marks, by the way. I think it's getting too detailed.
No.
But
I love this. I
yeah,
want
yeah,
this. More
yeah,
of
yeah,
this.
yeah. So,
How
so
out of how much?
I no. So for example, big wins would be scored as plus 200, plus 100. So it's a gut sense. I have no formula for this, but through my gut sense, I rate something that, okay, this was minus 20. Not focusing on my health,
Okay.
which has been going on for a long time, would be my minus 50 every week. Okay. Or or let's say, for example, I do this podcast, so I'll score this
Hmm.
in some manner,
Okay. Will
right?
you score
So
me
this
as
would be
well?
like a no. I'll score the fact that we did a podcast,
Uh,
so it will be like a plus 25 or a plus 50.
okay.
It
Okay.
depends.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just like doing
Okay. And
this.
you're still following the 8-8-8 principle, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of family time, 8 hours of sleeping.
No, I think it's not that I follow it, but again, as a principle, I love it. That I think to keep oneself balanced
Hmm.
and sane.
Hmm.
I think if you work hard for 8 hours,
Hmm.
if you devote another 8 hours to your family, to other upkeep
Right.
sort of tasks,
Right.
8 hours to sleep, I think that's a great life
Tanuj,
already.
there's so much discourse happening now on, the 12-hour work, the quote-unquote hustle culture we've already addressed, but now there's a new discourse happening, and every few years this happens. Like, when there is a race, it's very obvious that the people who are doping will win. Do you feel that sometimes because you're not doping, because you're like on the same 8-hour or 10-hour, whatever work, like, is there a fear of being like left behind or losing it?
Not at all. Not at all. I think if all the 20 people who work at Lawctopus, they work diligently for 8 hours, 5.5 days a week, I think I, as a leader, can't expect more. And I don't think, see, people hustling, I don't know what they hustle about. And I don't know what the quality of the hustled work is after actually 5-6 hours of good work. One can't work more than 3-4 hours on a very, like something which requires deep work. So I don't think we lose out ever if we are continuing doing this.
So, since you mentioned the word deep work, when are you doing your best work?
So I think my best work happens between, I would say, 6:30 to 8 p.m. and sometimes just early in the morning when I'm starting my work, let's say from 11 to 12:30, that initial first half. I think those two phases, and mostly it is wherever my work desk is. So I've shifted a lot throughout my life, and I think I've been having my work desk for 4 to 5 years now. Earlier it was very scattered. It was like work from bed. Now I can't do that. So I think wherever my desk is, a table, my chair, my laptop, wherever I have my routine, I love that. But sometimes, just if I need a bit of thinking, like a bit of visioneering, then I like to go to a cafe or to a hotel and just be there. I
By hotel, you mean like a hotel restaurant or a hotel room?
a lobby basically, or
Okay.
yeah.
So you need people around? Is that why you go to restaurants or?
I don't think so. I need a change of scenery. Yeah, I think it just helps me relax and think of things. There, I don't do my deep work, but it's more of like thinking about things and thinking about the next steps forward. Think about the bigger stuff as well. What's next.
When you are working and you are, say, you're entering your work day after you wake up at 8:30, you've written down your goals. How are you allotting your time? What are you looking at? Because you have multiple businesses to look after.
Yeah. See, 1.5 to 2 hours is set for meetings, every day from 3 to 5 p.m. And then mostly my work is, I would say, spread across 2 to 3 areas. One is team management, which is sometimes hiring, sometimes checking for, performance, that bit. Second would be new product development or, checking out the new revenue stream. So if it's a new course to be developed or let's say subscription feature to be launched for the media verticals, these sort of things. And the third would be big ticket sales, which is approaching colleges, other players as well, which are around big tickets. Mostly it is this. Sometimes I also, which I think is not a good habit, is I get deep into the smaller things as well. So for example, how the copy of a website is, or copy of a course on the website looks like, or what's the copy. So I like reviewing copies because I am good with words.
You're a writer.
Yes. But that is something which I would want to do lesser of, the editing work or the proofreading work, which again I'm not great at. I'm not great at editing or proofreading. I'm good at writing. But yeah, I think most of the work is around this. But of course, sometimes there are other meetings, sometimes there are calls to be done. So I plan my work accordingly and do. Sometimes there are financial stuff needs to be done.
Like, when you mentioned, that attention to detail, getting into the little copy stuff or the little smaller stuff, I feel like whenever someone talks about attention to detail, it always carries the fear of entering into perfectionism. Is that why you kind of like avoid that? Or you don't want to like get into the nitty-gritty of it?
Yeah, to be honest, I think other people should be doing it and I should be focused on, I would say, very harshly, but bigger things which move the needle for the company. And I think I have better people who can actually do the editing and proofreading work. It's not about perfectionism. So I think the standard which I have for my website is, we're not trying to be Oxford University Press, right? Which means you will not find even a single mistake in an entire 500-page book, right? That can't happen in those sort of publications. For me, if we have 1,000 words on the website, if there is one tiny mistake, I'm okay with it. But I'm not okay with one big mistake in those 100 words.
Like a blunder.
Yeah, like a mistake in the title of the post, right? Or a mistake in the headline of the post. These sort of things. But if there's a tiny spelling mistake or a comma in 1,000 words, that's again a standard I have for myself. That's okay for a blog which is doing a large volume of content like ours. That's perfectly fine.
So let's say that you are now you're launching a new course or a new wing or a new company or whatever. I'm sure there must be a process of iteration, prototyping. I think somewhere you've also described that entrepreneurship is a series of experiments. So when you are experimenting and when you're sitting in the lab, what does that process of iteration and prototyping look like?
Okay, so I don't have a exact process for that, but there are multiple channels through which I get feedback on what needs to be developed. So I very strongly believe in the intuition of people who are actually doing the things, right? So for example, there are many people who are delivering a certain course or teaching a certain course. They should be able to understand that what the demand from the learners is, right? Either it is through the live classes or through the feedback forms. Second mechanism sometimes is also studying the competitors. So for example, which of their courses is doing well, which is also in our area of strength, where we don't need to create a completely new capability, or where we don't need to go in ways or in paths where we are not good at. But if something aligns with our strengths and it is working well for the competitors, I think we would bring that course. And I think very specifically for the edtech platforms like ours, doing webinars on such topics also give us hints. So for example, I remember we did a webinar on check bounce notice. I was hosting and someone else was teaching. Now, when we were doing the webinar, I understood that, hey, this is a complex topic. Many people have many questions for it. There are many people who have signed up for it. I could see from the webinar that, hey, this deserves a course. So we don't have a very fixed process, but some of these things, the feedback forms, the webinars, people's own intuition, they give us, I would say, hints that, hey, a new product or a new course can be developed here.
Do you lean more towards intuition or data?
What sort of brings forth that need to make a decision is my intuition. And towards the end also, when I'm making my decision, when I'm, execute, like, hey, this is a decision, then it is also my intuition. But I think in between, I would want to have a buffer of second opinions and data.
And who do you trust for your second opinion?
A lot of people. So, for example, we have leaders in our team, right? There are 3-4 leaders of various teams, for Lawctopus Law School. Of course, we have Akanksha, your wife. Yeah.
I'm aware. Yeah, I know her.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So for our sales team, we have the sales head, Rohit, who's a very experienced person. Content team also, we have Apurva, who heads the content team. So if, for example, I'm hiring someone, then I would want their second opinion. But the need to hire, I think it will flow from me, or if someone tells me, then of course, we go ahead. But the first step and the last step, I usually take based on intuition. But there are some processes and checks and balances, data, second opinions in between.
Okay, so now that your feedback loop has informed you that there is a certain demand, then what happens? Then how quickly do you want it to be out in the market, your own product?
So it depends from like what is the product being developed, but I can give you an example. So if it's a good course, 1 month long, 2 month long, then it would take 3 to 4 months of 3 to 4 people working on it to develop a good course which is 80% complete. And when it is 80% complete, we launch it in the market. 100% complete, it becomes as the batch is going on. So a course, for example, a 1 to 2 month long course would take 3 to 4 months of good development. Sometimes we also shelve courses when we realize that, hey, this is not going anywhere. But let's say if we want to launch a new web page, then I think it will take 2 to 3 weeks of, design, copywriting, ideating.
And how good are you at explaining your vision to them for the course or for the website or the page?
I think again, now we have good processes where confusion is less. Earlier, I think 3 to 4 years before, I would say there was a lot of confusion and we did not have these processes. But thankfully now we have processes. So for example, for the tech team, or this was something which was brought forth by our CTO, ex-CTO now, of something called a PRD, a product requirement document. I think that's what it's called. So it's a very nice framework. Everyone puts, whoever the stakeholders are, that what they require in a certain product. What are the must-have features? What are good-to-have features? What are critical features? What are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do that? So, etc. I think so. Once everything is documented, I'm a big believer in documentation now. So everything is documented. We have regular meetings. It mostly keeps the team on the same page. But of course, there are so many moving parts in any project that there is bound to be confusion and a bit of non-clarity, which is completely fine. I think it's part and parcel of the game. So sometimes, let's say if the content team needs a certain feature to be developed, right? They would be the ones who will do the first draft. I will review, give my suggestions, ask questions. It will go through some level of, iterations as well and have discussions with the tech team. And then it is sort of finalized and then we sort of start executing.
Okay. Okay. And when you're delegating these tasks to different teams, how do you decide that this is a me task or otherwise this is somebody else's task? What is the quality that you're looking at?
See, anything which is going to impact the website or our users in a deep way or a big way, I would like it to go through my eyes. Currently, the team is small. Though we are serving a large number of people, we are just 20 people. So I think I can manage it for now. At the same time, sometimes I want people to take leadership. As a part of, I would say, leadership development, I would let them do the things completely on their own, knowing fully well that they will make mistakes and actually not preventing those mistakes from happen. I mean, of course, preventing the big mistakes if I can, but letting the small mistakes actually happen and letting people figure out how they are going to solve things. Otherwise, it just becomes, one person pushing things at different people, which I don't think is healthy or wise.
That's a very empathetic approach to want to teach people. Doesn't it come at a cost? Probably you're teaching somebody and they just, get up and leave after a few months. Is that disheartening or is it a price that you're willing to pay?
Yes, people leaving is very, very disheartening. Personally, for me, it's very, very disheartening. But overall, when people are making mistakes in projects and things are getting delayed, I'm sort of okay with it. I'm not. So, okay, I will say I'm not okay with it emotionally, but rationally, I'm sort of okay with it. I know it's part and parcel of, entrepreneurship or implementing new projects.
You reason with yourself.
Yes, and I think that's fine.
Tanuj, you are a leader of although the size of the firm is small, but you're doing big stuff and for a very long time. See, I'll give you an example. So for me, we have a family business. And when I say family business, I literally mean that my mom, dad and we go to office and, sometimes we take turns doing certain things. Sometimes I'm off, I'm sick, then my mom takes over or, sometimes I take over for my dad. Similarly, my sister has a school. So I am now assisting her with her. So even though it's her school, I'm helping her with the accounts and stuff like that. We have each other's back as the upper management or, if there are like 4 people sitting at the top of the pyramid. You are alone. Does it get lonely?
Yes. So I think, it's a famous saying as well that it gets lonely at the top. I think I've sort of experienced it, and I know when I not experience it. So when there are good leaders taking care of different teams, often it's good to have their support, so that's one. And now, of course, I have my wife as well, so I can sort of vent better, I have someone who can listen to me. I think if things go to a certain level, then I have a couple of friends who I trust deeply. I have one friend for venting and I have one friend for advice. I'm a big fan of executive coaching. So I've had multiple coaches in the past. I love engaging with them and dealing with my problems. Yeah, but it does
What was
get
the influence of Shamnath Bashir on your life?
huge influence.
He was your
Like,
personal coach, or he was?
no. So he was my professor, though he'd never taught me a subject. He was a legend in the field of intellectual property. He had joined our college as a Ministry of HRD professor, IPR chair,
This is in
something like that.
NUJS, right?
Yes, this is in NUJS, and we had just entered college. I think he came to the college when our batch entered the college, and then he left when our batch left. So we were truly blessed to have him with us. He was just, I've never seen anyone make friends so effortlessly or anyone so charming, actually. I have never met Shah Rukh Khan and I've never interacted with him, but I don't think Shah Rukh Khan would have, or I think maybe he was like equivalent. He was like Professor Shah Rukh Khan. I learned so much from him. He influenced me in so many ways that.
Can you tell me some ways?
Yes. So, we started a project together, though it didn't turn out well, but we had started. It was called Lex Biases, which was ensuring industry academia collaboration in the law sphere. So what he did, and I was 20 then, Lawctopus had started, we had also started this. He introduced me to people like Rajiv Luthra, the late Mr. Rajiv Luthra, who's the founder of Luthra and Luthra. It's one of the biggest law firms in the country. He introduced me to Nishit Desai and people like this. Nishit Desai is the founder of Nishit Desai Associates. Like, these are legends of the field. These are like a young cricketer talking about Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli. Thanks to his connections and his command, I got to meet these people. I was presenting in front of these people as a 20-year-old. And I would like to give myself a bit of credit as well that, I just went with the flow. I was not like, oh my God, how will I meet these people? I went with the flow. I went to cities like Bombay and Delhi. And so those introductions, but I think Shamnath Bashir's biggest influence was just the person he was. All of us looked up to him. We were like, wow, we would want to be this sort of a person. He was sharp. He was spiritual. He was empathetic. He was philosophical. And he got the work done as well. I think I would not have had a bigger influence. I don't think I've had a bigger.
I can see how emotional you're like just getting just thinking about him. I think one of the things that you mentioned about Mr. Bashir was the spirituality aspect of it. And I know it plays a big role in your life as well. Last year, you became a half-time CEO in your own words. And you started I know you've explored Vipassana.
Yeah, that was yeah.
You were saying something.
Yeah, I said that halftime CEO was a very short-lived experiment. I'm now back to being very full-time.
No, of course.
Yeah.
No, but you've explored your spiritual aspect in many ways. I know you've said in interviews that meditation helps you, ground yourself, and you've explored Vipassana a couple of times now, 10-day retreats, silent retreats, as I can imagine. I know spirituality has the meaning is, of course, that of, being grounded and being present and empathetic and deep listening. Can you tell me how spirituality is connected to sales?
Yeah, I think, I can make a connection, though I've never thought about it.
I mean, of course, if there is no connection, then you please tell me that.
No. I think there is definitely spirituality. I think has connection with everything. And, one definition of sales, which I've recently learned, I think I might have sort of resonated with it earlier as well, is sales is about helping people. Sales is about solving a pain point. And, all spiritual traditions would talk about empathy or caring or helping each other. Every part of business, every part of life is, I think, inherently spiritual, and one can make these connections with any aspect of business.
Does a spiritual person impress the client in a certain way?
Some people do tell us that, hey, we respect Lawctopus, or I know that you would not do these sort of things. So I think there is some sort of respect, or people have their own imaginations about, let's say, what Lawctopus will be about, or if they're talking to me, what I will be about. But many people don't also. For them, we are just like any other vendor. member, and for them I'm like any other CEO as well. And I think one thing which we lack is we don't meet people physically. We don't have those, I would say, longer, deeper interactions. But yes, I think some people would see us differently, but not everyone. And I don't think I as a person or Lawctopus as an organization is there where we want to be in terms of spirituality. I think we have just started. I both as an individual and Lawctopus as an organization in the journey of spirituality. I think we've just started. There's a long way to go. There are many aspects of current business, of myself, which I have to do sometimes, which I don't like and which I don't relate.
As in?
Simple things like being angry with my team members. Now, the good thing is I know when I'm angry with my team members. I'm not out of control at any point in time. I know I'm getting angry. That's a knowing, being aware of your anger. I think
But you're not expressing it.
I express it, and I do not resonate with that expression. I think there can be different ways or better ways, and it does create a dissonance in me, cognitive dissonance, spiritual dissonance, that hey, I don't think this is right, and I don't know any other way. Yeah, so that's why I said, I personally there's a long way to go, and the organization as well.
The other thing is that I feel like when you're instilling any school of thought within your corporate identity, I feel like there can be a lot of misalignment with your employees. They may not get it or they may not understand it, but especially something spiritual is, not everybody's cup of tea. Do you feel that there could be a challenge there also?
So I don't think we have done that. Like there is no organized philosophy or organized way of spirituality which we have tried to incorporate in the organization. But I think there are some principles from various traditions, from various frameworks, which I would want to be there in the organization. Like any organization would have a mission, would have a vision, would have some set of values. We also have a set of values. And the way to express it, or the way to sort of give it a framework, can be through multiple philosophies and expressions of spirituality, and I think that is required.
So obviously you're a lifelong learner, you're a lifelong student, you've been doing so many courses. I've seen you do so many things, and when you are learning so much and you're understanding so many school of thoughts and management gurus and coaches and all of that, whatever recipe they give you, are you following it to the T or are you like customizing it?
100% customization. Currently, I don't think that you can follow anything to a T. So, for example, in the organization, we have the concept of OKRs, objectives and key results, and KPIs, key performance indicators. Now, these are frameworks which are used across the world, very popular frameworks, very useful as well. But we have customized this to our needs 100%, and we always do that. As in, we would want to follow what something is saying, but of course, it has to be tweaked based on our needs and based on...
Can you give me an example how you've customized OKRs and KPIs?
Right. So, for example, KPIs means key performance indicators. And there is some sort of relationship between KPIs and OKRs, which any good book will tell you about. I don't understand the relationship between KPIs and OKRs too much, though there is some sort of intuitive understanding, logical understanding that there is going to be some relation. But we have not explored it, and we don't frame our KPIs or OKRs in a way in which that relationship could be understood. Second thing, we use KPIs in our company as minimum performance indicators. So these are actually MPIs. That, hey, these are the minimum expectations from any team member. Those are not what KPIs are meant to be. Those are actually key performance.
So you're setting a floor, not a ceiling.
Yes, with respect to KPIs, yes. But actually, that's a good way to articulate that OKRs are our ceiling and KPIs are our floor.
You're welcome. Okay. So, Tanuj, now let's come to creativity. I know you're an extremely creative person. You've been a very extremely creative person. You're author of such noted works as My Dog, Sad Monkey, and Nice Pet.
Oh my God, we were just discussing these poems. So my in-laws had just come to Chandigarh and my parents were here as well. My father, he's really fond of my poems and he has to recite them at every family gathering.
How sweet.
Yeah.
And you got paid good money. 50 rupees per poem.
Oh my God, that was rich. Yeah.
So you have practiced your creativity immensely, and even as legal poet, you were writing, and you were known as a writer and an anonymous writer at that for a very long time. Now, as an entrepreneur, can you define what creativity is?
I think creativity is about bringing something new to existence, something which has not existed before. For me, that would be creativity.
So how does that manifest in your work?
In a lot of ways, I think I'll have to boast here a bit. So, for example, I think we have given the legal world in India a new, like, it's a new thing, right? Lawctopus is a new thing. Many people would know about it. So again, I think I'll be exaggerating here. I am really sorry about that. But just like the iPhone was, right? So the Lawctopus was also something new for the legal industry, or even this concept of internship experiences. Now many people would say that, hey, I'm going to share my internship experience. But how an internship experience is written, or the fact that an internship experience is also actually called an internship experience, not an internship review, is something which we brought. I mean, when we had brought it, we didn't think that, hey, this will become big, or this will become like a form of content in itself, right? But it has now become that. Or even how we structure our headlines for various opportunities. I now know colleges which frame their headlines when they are, let's say, coming up with a conference or a seminar in the way that we have sort of formulated. Just like a blue book or these things would have their own styles of citation. We have our own style of putting headlines into the article, and which is being copied by many people, which is good. So these are the new things which we have brought into existence, and I'm proud of them. And currently also, see, whenever we are launching a new course, it is an act of creativity. If we are launching a new product, for example a subscription product, or if it's a new revenue or a business model, it is creativity for me. My personal creativity, I think, is a little less these days. As you said, I love to write, but I don't get the time, or I'm not in that zone these days. And by zone, I mean, like, I'm doing a very different thing, of which is managing and running a company. You can bring some level of creativity into that, but one of my key avenues for creativity is writing, and I get very little time, and I would just say mind space to do that.
Writing both in terms of your like articles and also like your personal poetry or whatever
Yeah,
you want to do,
poetry,
right?
and yeah, just having more longer organized forms of writing. Small pieces of writing I do here and there, which is good, but that does not quench my thirst for creativity.
Coming back to the last big writing project, which is Law as a Career that you did,
Hmm.
looking back now 10 years down the line, because I remember when I was reading it and you were a lot of things that you mentioned there did not acknowledge AI, because obviously us samay to kuch AI tha hi nahi.
Yeah.
If you could revisit that book now, do you think you would make some changes?
See, one thing is, I don't want to revisit that book. That was a book which was written by a 25-year-old for 20-year-olds. 16 to 24-year-olds. Some of my friends told me that, hey, don't write a book at a certain, at this young an age, because, when you grow older, you will read and you'll be like, oh, what crap did I write? I don't think of it in that way. I think I wrote a very useful book. It is it is an above average book in terms of its writing and overall content, but it serves its purpose. So if you want to know about law as a career, I cannot suggest a better book. And
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
so yeah, I would not revisit it, Shubhankar. I might do a third edition of the book if the publishers approach me. I would do a few tweaks here and there, but I would not revisit it.
I think your next book should be about just career or life.
No, I think that will come a bit later, but yes, yes.
Okay. So, Tanuj, now I think we've defined a lot of things. You've answered a lot of questions of mine. There's one thing though. I don't know where you mentioned this, but I think it's again in your book. You said that the entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster, mentally and emotionally. You might be celebrating a wild success in the morning and dealing with a hugely negative episode in the evening. Let's talk about crisis management now. Can you expand your approach towards crisis when a situation like that happens and how you deal with it?
I think my first step is to actually become calm. I'll give you a small example. There was a time in college, we were in fourth or fifth year then, when we lost all our data at Lawctopus. And this was around 400 to 500 articles, which for us then was a big amount of content. And my friends and my co-founders, they were banging on my door telling me, Kalia, darwaza khol, Lawctopus ka sara data ud gaya hai. And I was like, I knew this was a crisis. And I think it was, I don't know, maybe I was avoiding it, but I told them that you guys handle it. I will join you guys in the library, because the library had an AC and it had good internet connection. in an hour, let me sleep for now. Because I think fundamentally I was convinced that we will overcome it and something will be done. And we
So
could not. Yeah.
it was not a flight or fight mode. It was not कि अरे बहुत panic हो रहा है, anxiety हो रही है, मैं सो जाता हूँ. It was not
नहीं
that.
नहीं था, ऐसा नहीं था. Right. And I went to the library, I think in an hour. I saw Dhruv and Prateek. They were actively working on, the computers, trying to figure out. And we realized that, hey, we'll be probably able to retrieve 10 to 20% of the data, but most of the data is gone. And I was like, okay, we'll restart things. We'll start publishing the content again. So a lesson
That
learned.
was that was how quick you reached that. मतलब, there was no moment of despair at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm just thinking maybe there was some moments of despair, but I don't think it lasted for more than a while. And it was not so, even if it lasted for 2 to 3 days, it was not like despair through and through. It was probably like 5 minutes of despair or regret, thinking that, hey, could we have taken a backup? Could we have done this? There was no long-term despair.
And
Yeah.
is that applicable in your personal life also? Do you never get like that these moments?
No, I do. I do get affected. It's not that I don't get affected, but I don't let it stop me, or it's not, it's like maybe maximum 2 to 3 hours off. Or if it's a huge incident, then of course, like someone passing away, maybe someone close, like then you would feel very sad for some days. But then you recover and you overcome.
What are you telling yourself in these moments?
I think firstly that things will be all right. Things are impermanent. Bad things are impermanent. Good things are impermanent. That this is very natural. Highs and lows are a very natural part of life. And thirdly, that, I will do things like I'll take help, I'll figure things out, and things will be okay.
Say you start two projects simultaneously, project A, project B, and you invest equal, like your will, money, all your resources are going equally in both the projects. Project A succeeds and project B fails for whatever XYZ reason. When you do the post-mortem of your failure, what have you usually found to be the reasons why certain things fail and certain things don't?
Okay, I think that's a very interesting question. So, one thing which I've noted is if you don't invest your soul into a project, it will not succeed. There are a couple of projects which I can think of. They will not succeed if you have not put in your soul. Like if it's just a very calculative step, it will most likely not succeed. Or even if it succeeds in some metrics, it will not give you satisfaction. Second thing is, if you don't put in consistent effort for at least a couple of years, projects won't succeed. I think time, it also brings in this element of compound interest. I'm a huge fan of compound interest when it comes to business and, like just thinking about effort in general. Without consistent efforts, projects will fail. And the third thing is always an X factor, which you can't control or define. There is an X factor. So Lawctopus always had an X factor. We had things going for us right from the start. Maybe we were, the early players or the first players. Maybe the time was right, not too much competition. So there are many things which have to fall in place to make this X factor work, and there is surely an X factor. But if the X factor is not there, you might try your best, you might give your best, and things still won't succeed. And I've made my peace with it.
Tanuj, when you're making decisions, I feel like there are two situations generally where one person makes a decision. One situation is when you have a lot of time to prepare, and I know you prepare very well, you prepare a lot. Then there are moments when, like in moments of crisis, where you have to make a very quick decision. What is your internal process in creating, in getting to those decisions when you don't have the time to think about for far too long?
Once a crisis hits you, I think my fundamental aim is survival and preservation, which is, I think, very logical and very obvious. And I would take steps to ensure survival and preservation. And then I think my thing would also be having a very clear communication. I'm not a very diplomatic communicator. I'm very bad with it. I've tried to improve. So I will convey it to the person directly. At the same time, I'll try to be supportive of the repercussions of the decision, because if it's a crisis and you're taking a strong decision, it will have some repercussions on some people. So I would want to support that person in whatever ways I can to deal with it. But I think my thought process is that let's survive this. Let's go through this. Because if you have survived this, then things will get better.
There are certain decisions that I'm sure you have to take with the consensus of the team, and it has to be a democratic process, and there's a lot of brainstorming involved. So can you just expand a little bit on your brainstorming process, how it happens with your team on a day-to-day basis?
One thing is I welcome new ideas and new things to be discussed. That is one. Secondly, I also am very ruthless nowadays in terms of which decisions or which ideas will be implemented, which will not be implemented. And this is after the brainstorming has happened, because we have limited resources in terms of people and time, money, everything, right? Now, often if someone has come up with an idea, it has to be written down in a Google Doc for the related stakeholders to comment on it, because I want people to read, put in their comments, put in their questions before coming for such a brainstorming meeting, so that most of the, I would say, the raw material is out. What are your questions? What are your assumptions? What are you trying to get to? What's the bigger thing? What are the challenges we can face? And then we do the discussion. Though, to be honest, I don't think this is what brainstorming means. Brainstorming ideally is something which is without a structure, where you let go of your, I would say, restrictions and, questions about ideas. So I think in our current team, it happens less, like very active sessions of brainstorming. But yeah, I think we should do more brainstorming in our team. Thanks for another idea. Yeah.
So
but this is how an idea sort of gets implemented. There has to be a written document which has to be commented upon by various people, and then we have focused discussions on things. Because otherwise, especially in remote teams, meetings can become a huge waste of time. And that's also my concern, to have this sort of a process for our team.
When somebody comes up with an idea, could they be at the lowest rung of the ladder and still present that idea?
100%. Yes.
And they'll be given equal attention in terms of upper management commenting and stuff like that.
Yes. And I think because we are a small company, that can easily happen. I don't know what happens in bigger companies or what will happen with Lawctopus when we grow bigger.
So when you work, do you have a notebook? Are you writing notes?
Yes. I can't function without a notebook. I can't function without my diary. I can't think without having a pen and paper. If I don't have a pen and paper, there have been instances where I've actually taken a tissue paper from wherever. And I've noted things down there. I can't think without that.
And when you're thinking, what are you writing down?
Many things. So, for example, what is the idea about? What sort of, one of my initial questions is, what sort of scale can this achieve? Again, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't want ideas which can't scale. So how much it can scale, what sort of resources will it require, what sort of revenue potential it has, and then also, is this something which we are currently good at? Because if we are not good at it, then it will require a substantial amount of resources, and I'm usually more wary of these ideas. So I want to play to our strengths, and then I also see that, hey, is this where I now want to go? Yeah.
Is it aligning with your vision?
Yes, with my vision and with my values also. Yeah. And what also it is doing to Lawctopus. So Lawctopus has a certain flavor to it now. It's like it's an organism by itself, right? So if I introduce this new element to Lawctopus, what will it do to Lawctopus? Like it's an ecosystem, and let's say if I bring in a tiger in front of a rhino, something will happen. So do I want that to happen? And I think I let my ideas sit for a long time.
You leave the field fallow.
Yes, that's my favorite. One of my favorite phrases. But that's in a different context. This is in a different context. Like leaving the field fallow is basically about resting and letting yourself regenerate and rejuvenate. This is about let it simmer actually for a while. Let it
cook.
Yeah, let it cook for a while. See what's happening, and then decide whether to serve it or not. Like that.
So that gestation period informs you, when you review it again, it informs you that whether this was a good decision or not.
No, when the gestation period is happening, I've not taken the decision. That is set aside. That is, I really can't explain that process, but there is something happening internally where, all of these things are happening, scale and resources, values, vision, what it will do to Lawctopus, what it will do to me as well. Also to the ecosystem, to the people we are serving, like what will it do? I can't predict it, but I want to have a sense of it.
This is all happening internally within you, and you're also writing this down in your notebook.
I'm writing this down, and sometimes...
Almost like journaling.
Yes,
you're journaling it.
Yes, and sometimes I am discussing it with people as well.
That's your wife and the couple of friends that you mentioned.
Yeah, wife, friends, coaches.
Okay, so Tanuj, I think this is my final question. This was a bit of a broader question, so I saved it for towards the end. I tend to butcher this word. EdTech institutionalization. How does one make EdTech an inbuilt feature of the law school?
That deserves an essay. But I think first the leadership of colleges, they have to be enrolled into this idea that there are things which the law school can do and there are things which they can't. And the things which they can't, edtechs can fill in a gap. I think that's one huge thing. Secondly, whoever the players are in the edtech, if we start giving great experiences to students where the demand sort of is generated by them and through them, that makes our job easier, and of course the college administration's job easier as well. Especially in legal edtech, there still isn't a very high quality player. We are quality players. There are a couple of others which are quality players, but I don't think there is anyone who's a very high quality player. So I think we need to invent ourselves, or there needs high quality edtech player needs to come. And when I talk about enrollment, there's a lot of pull happening. I think that can pull some institutions into that edtech. Then of course I think something which is very simple is edtechs actually producing very clear results for the people we are serving. It could be internships, it could be jobs, it could be actually people seeing themselves or their parents seeing that or their peers seeing that, oh, I have grown in this 1 year, and that growth is very visible. So just like when you go to a gym, right, you see the growth in your muscles and you are like, wow, this really helped me. And then your friends also say that, your parents also say that. I think edtech can create that sort of an impact. I think all of this and many other things need to happen before we can talk about institutionalization. Some of these things are in our control, some of these are not.
Like you said, some of the things that are in your control is raising the quality, going to the highest quality possible for your universities and NLUs to take note and would want to collaborate with you. You mentioned a very interesting thing somewhere. You spoke about how growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone, but it also doesn't happen in the fear zone.
Mm-hmm.
There is a gap in the middle which is known as the quote-unquote growth zone, where growth happens.
Yeah.
So for you to pull yourself up to the highest quality possible, what is needed currently?
I think one is a vision and commitment to do that, not being
which I am sure you already have.
No, sometimes you are satisfied with good, like there's a brilliant book as well, Good to Great. So we are satisfied being good. Like our courses are being rated 92 on 100. What's the need to improve? Why would you invest so many extra resources to move, let's say, from 92 to 95? Is that even possible? Is that even required? Is being great actually required? So I think that is one, that vision, that willingness. And secondly, I also think resources. So I think we did touch upon being bootstrapped versus raising funding for some time. Sometimes one does feel the need to, let's say, raise money, because money can solve some interesting problems. Money can solve the problems which sometimes only money can solve. So
you can experiment a lot. You can launch experimental products.
Yes, you can experiment and you can basically invest into quality. Small things, big things. I think these couple of things.
So are you finding that tempting now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Tanuj, my last question is not really a question, a demand rather, which is that chickenpox led to Lawctopus, COVID-19 led to Lawctopus Law School. God forbid, but are we waiting for another pandemic or illness for the next?
I hope not, and I really hope that. But yeah, I mean, things are funny. These things have actually led to. I think, when you're diseased and when you're resting, again, that leaves the mind fallow. And then, the regular day-to-day concerns are, kept aside. And then you can think of things and, you can.
So that vacuousness is kind of like, making a environment for you, for new ideas.
Yes. And that rest also. And that not concerning yourself with the day-to-day things. And then, mind goes into nice places. Yes.
So now with your busy schedule, I know that you're probably in the process of starting a couple of new ventures now, but you're doing that with a busy schedule. So how have you managed to find that rest? Without that rest period, you found new ideas?
No, I think I get enough rest and I am not that busy. And I also think that this thing of, this thing which humanity has invented of, taking one day a week off, I think that's more than good enough as a rest. One can, of course, take longer vacations and, holidays, sometimes once in a quarter, longer. Like this Diwali break was a longish break. And I feel very, very well rested, looking forward to actually starting the work. Now there will be a new year. So I am well rested. I don't think I need. The schedule is busy, but then again, then some structures will be invented and implemented to ensure that other businesses can also be done, right? So, for example, there could be a CEO of Lawctopus as well. There could be other leaders who are there. So,
Okay.
yes.
Great, Tanuj. I'm looking forward to that. And thank you for giving me your valuable time, Tanuj. It's been a pleasure and a great learning experience. I've had a wonderful time. I don't know if I can say that for you as well,
No,
but
no,
I've had
absolutely. No, Shubhankar, your questions are so well researched and they are so well articulated. I also learned something about myself and, of course, about you as well through this conversation. Hats off to the research that you put in, and all the best for the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Tanuj, and it's been my honor and pleasure to interview you.
Pleasure talking to you, Shubhankar. Thank you.
If you learned something new from this episode of the Horsemouth podcast, do rate and review us on Spotify, Instagram, X, or wherever people engage with you the most.